Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another interesting session on semiconductors. In this class, we'll understand or we'll recollect what we have learned about semiconductors in our prior classes. So, at the BTech level, we'll be handling this topic called semiconductors in a more mathematical way, uh, but it needs some review, recollection of the things that we have already learned. Right? Uh, let's start. Materials, they can be classified into a variety of in different ways. So based on the electrical properties, there is one such classification which says there are three kinds of materials: conductors, semiconductors, and insulators. See, if a given material is permitting the electric current to pass through it, then we call it as a conductor. If it does not, then it is called insulator. Then semiconductors are the materials with intermediate properties between conductors and insulators. They are neither conductors nor insulators. At times they behave as insulators, at times they behave as conductors. Let's try to understand in a bit detailed manner. At absolute zero, if you consider, for example, silicon or germanium, a fourth group element, because it's a fourth group element, it's called a tetravalent atom. So it will have four valence electrons. So these four valence electrons, they will be involved in four different covalent bonds. And at absolute zero, these four valence electrons are strictly involved in covalent bonding with four similar valence electrons of different atoms. And so the silicon atom or germanium atom will be attaining its octet configuration because of this covalent bond. And because of octet configuration, it acquires what is called stability. Why elements they involve in bonding? This is the simple reason: to acquire stability. Now, at absolute zero, because there is no thermal energy being supplied to the material, all the valence electrons, they are tightly held in the covalent bonds, and there is no thermal energy, so there is no breaking of bonds. And there is no breaking of bonds, there is no electron leaving its parent atom, breaking the covalent bond. And since there are no electrons which are leaving the parent atom, there is no um, free electron available in the semiconductor material. Accordingly, when you apply electric field, since there are no free electrons, there are no such electrons which can respond to the applied electric field. So when you apply electric field and when you don't find any electron to respond to the applied electric field, then there is no question of any flow of charge. When there is no flow of charge, rate of flow of charge is what is called current. So when there is no flow of charge, there is no current. And when current is not flowing, we say that it's a insulator. And that's how a semiconductor material is a perfect insulator at absolute zero. Let us quickly recollect again. So a semiconductor material generally consists of four valence electrons, because it's a tetravalent atom. And these four valence electrons, they are involved in covalent bonding with four other similar valence electrons of different atoms. Because of this covalent bonding, the considered silicon atom will be achieving the octet configuration and thereby achieving the stability. Now that all the valence electrons are involved in bond and they have achieved the octet configuration, and they don't have any thermal energy being supplied, and accordingly they don't find a reason to come out of the parent atom by breaking the bonds. So in the process, they 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 end up with the parent atoms, but they don't come out of the parent atoms. And because they are not coming out of the parent atoms, there are no free electrons. Because there are no free electrons, when you apply electric field, there is nothing to respond to the applied electric field. And because there is no response to the applied electric field, there is no flow of charge. And because there is no flow of charge, the rate of flow of charge is nothing but current, so there is no flow of current. And because the material is not conducting any current, we say the material is a insulator. And as the temperature increases, the thermal energy input is given to the semiconductor material. Various free electrons, valence electrons rather, various valence electrons, they accept this thermal energy, they break the bond, and they they start um, um, coming out of the parent atom, and they start behaving as free electrons. These free electrons, as the name indicates, they are free to move anywhere and everywhere inside the specimen, inside the semiconductor material. So they'll be moving randomly, or what I can say, they'll be wandering here and there inside the specimen. Now, when you apply electric field, these valence electrons, these free electrons rather, they try to respond to the applied electric field, and they try to move in a direction opposite to that of the applied electric field. In the process, they constitute some current. So in case one, when there is no free electron, there is no flow of charge, there is no current, material is perfect insulator. In case two, there is some amount of charge flow, there is some amount of current flowing. So now the material transforms from insulator to conductor as the temperature increases. So thereby, we call this interesting property as negative temperature coefficient of resistance. So as the temperature increases from absolute zero to room temperature, the material starts conducting, or otherwise the material's resistance starts reducing. So as the temperature increases, resistance is decreasing, and so we call it as negative temperature coefficient of resistance. With the increase in temperature, if the resistance increases, then we call it as positive temperature coefficient of resistance, and it is usually observed in conducting materials or metals. Now, these semiconductors, they can be further classified into two categories, intrinsic and extrinsic. So if I have a pure silicon, if I have a pure germanium, then we call it as intrinsic or pure semiconductors. If I add some impurity material, that's what we call the doping process. So if I add some impure material to this semiconductor material, pure semiconductor material, then I'll be getting what is called extrinsic or impure semiconductors. In the so-called pure semiconductors or intrinsic semiconductors, so we have equal number of electrons and holes. That is, if one electron, if one valence electrons, it breaks the bond and leaves the parent atom. In its place, a vacancy is created, and that vacancy is called hole. So, as many electrons liberated, so many holes are created. So, the number of electrons, free electrons generated is equal to number of holes that are created in the semiconductors material. So in the case of intrinsic semiconductors, the number of free electrons will be equal to number of holes. What about the extrinsic semiconductors? We'll understand shortly. Now, as far as the extrinsic semiconductors are concerned, there is an important process called doping process, where we'll be adding an impure atom. When I say impure atom, please don't misunderstand for a dusty or untidy atom. When I say impure atom, an atom with different set of properties. Silicon, germanium, which is a fourth group element, has got some set of properties. Now, if I add a third group element, then it will have a different set of properties. So, in the context of silicon, in the context of germanium, this third group element is a impurity atom. If I add some fifth group element like phosphorus, then in the context of silicon or germanium, this fifth group element is an impurity atom. So when I add the addition of impurity atom to a semiconductor material is what is called doping process. Now we can add either third group element or fifth group element as impurity to the intrinsic semiconductor. Now, when I add fifth group impurity atom, let us say phosphorus, then N-type materials result in. When I add a third group impurity atom, let us say like boron, then P-type material results in. Now let us see, let us understand how this uh, N-type material, P-type material can be produced. Now, if you look at the figure, there are germanium atoms. So this is how it is. So just now we understood that germanium has got four valence electrons, and it will be involved in four covalent bonds: one, two, three, and four. So four uh, covalent bonds will be formed by the four valence electrons of the germanium atom, and that's how I get an octet configuration: two here, two here, two here, and two which is not shown in the figure. So totally eight electrons, sorry, are available for this germanium atom. Four from this original atom and four from the surrounding atoms. So ultimately, the octet configuration is satisfied. Now, in this germanium material, if I add a third group element like boron, boron is a trivalent atom. So in the sense it has got three valence electrons, 1, 2, and 3. Now this boron atom replaces one germanium atom in the crystal's lattice, and it occupies the place of a germanium atom. Now when germanium was available earlier, so four valence electrons were available and four valence electrons formed four covalent bonds. Whereas now germanium is replaced by boron, it has got only three valence electrons and only three covalent bonds can be formed. So this is bond 1, bond 2, and bond 3. On the fourth side, there is a fourth valence electron of germanium, but there is no valence electron for the case of boron atom to complete this bond. So this will be an incomplete bond. There is a vacancy available here to complete this bond. And this vacancy, we call it as hole. Remember, there is a hole being present here, a vacancy being created here without any free electron. There is no free electron anywhere in this picture. But even in the absence of free electron, there is a hole being created. So in the sense, in the case of extrinsic semiconductors, there is no such rule that there should be equal number of electrons and equal number of holes. No. Even in the absence of free electrons, there will be holes created. How? Just now we understood. So by doping, by adding the third group element, say boron atom, so we'll be introducing hole. So if I add 10 boron atoms, I'll be introducing 10 holes. Now, because of uh, thermal energy being supplied to this semiconductor material, germanium material, there will be electron hole pairs created as we understood in the case of intrinsic semiconductors. So accordingly, let us say there are about 3 electron hole pairs generated. There are already 10 holes. Now 3 electrons and 3 holes are generated. So we'll be getting 13 holes, whereas 3 electrons. So 13 is very large compared to 3. So we say holes are majority charge carriers here, whereas electrons are minority charge carriers in this case of p-type material. Now let us look into the fifth group element, or otherwise called n-type extrinsic semiconductor. So here we have taken considered the example of silicon atom. Now one silicon atom is replaced by a fifth group element, say phosphorus. So as the name says, fifth group element, so it will have five valence electrons. Let us look at them: one, two, three, four, and the fifth one. Now this fifth electron will be very loosely attached to the parent atom, phosphorus atom. The remaining four valence electrons are involved in covalent bonds with the 4 surrounding silicon atoms. So this fifth electron, it is loosely attached to the parent atom and it is not involved in any kind of um, chemical bond here. So when we give a little bit of thermal energy, because this is loosely attached to the parent atom, so a little bit of thermal energy can kick it out, can send this fifth electron out of away from the parent atom. When this fifth electron leaves the parent atom, there is no incomplete bond because this is not originally involved in any bond. So we need only four. There is a possibility for only four electrons to to participate in bonding, and all the four valence electrons have already involved in that bonding. So the fifth electron, there is no scope for this fifth electron to involve in bond. So when it leaves the parent atom by accepting thermal energy, no vacancy is created. We get only free electron without any hole being created. Now, as in the case of intrinsic semiconductor, when you supply thermal energy, then electron hole pairs will be generated. Let us say again 10 phosphorus atoms are added, so you get 10 electrons. Then 3 electron hole pairs are generated, then 10 plus 3, 13 electrons and only 3 holes. So 13 electrons they form majority charge carriers and 3 holes they form minority charge carriers. So sum up, materials are classified into 3 categories: conductors, semiconductors, and insulators based on the electrical properties. Now, if the material is conducting, permitting electric current, we call it as conductor. If the material does not, then it is called insulator. Semiconductors are intermediate between conductors and insulators. At times they conduct, at times they do not conduct. At absolute zero, they are perfect insulators. At room temperature, they are very good conductors. Then semiconductors are again classified in two categories, say intrinsic and extrinsic. So if you have a pure semiconductor material, we call it as intrinsic semiconductor. If you have an impurity atom being doped, then we call it as extrinsic semiconductor. Based on the type of the impurity added, either fifth group or third group. So if it is fifth group, we call it as N-type semiconductor. If it is third group, we call it as P-type extrinsic semiconductors. So in case of intrinsic semiconductors, we have equal number of electrons and holes. In the case of extrinsic semiconductors, we'll have one kind of charge carriers will be larger in number compared to the other. For example, p-type, holes are more in number, they are called majority charge carriers. Electrons are lesser in number, they are called minority charge carriers. In the case of n-type material, holes are electrons are majority charge carriers while holes are minority charge carriers. Continue in the next class. Thank you.